Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. And today is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week as always. And this week in Data Breach is actually a couple of weeks, primarily because I missed the past Sunday, and I do apologize for that. I was traveling, could not get to it, and just so much stuff going on in the news that I couldn't keep up. But we are playing catch up this week, and there's a ton to go through. And as always, I want to thank the people that sent me some of this information, and that would be Jacqueline Wolf, Steve Finaro, and Tata Shima. I really, really appreciate it. Please keep sending those tips my way. And with that, let's start with Food Lion and Hannaford supermarkets. Now, what we're talking about actually is Ahold Delhaize USA. They are the parent company of a whole bunch of stuff, including those two supermarkets. And Ahold has begun notifying people affected by this data breach, according to a notice on essentially Food Lion and a couple of other supermarkets' websites. So, Ahold subsidiaries include Food Lion, basically Giant, Hannaford, Stop and Shop, AD USA Distribution, and AD USA Transportation, and they were all affected by this. The majority of people affected, for the record, were employees and former employees, as well as dependents and their beneficiaries, according to the notice from late June. So we're talking about contact information, birth dates, social security numbers, passport and driver's license information, financial account and health information, and at least 387,071 people were caught up in that. That is disclosures of North Carolinians, so we know that it's much more than that. But heads up, if you work for an Ahold Delhaize USA subsidiary, you're probably caught up in this as well. It's absolutely nuts. With that, let's move on to Android, specifically the mobile phone, because there's a spyware app called Cat Watchful. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's a spyware masquerading as a child monitoring app that claims to be, quote, invisible and cannot be detected, end quote, all while it's uploading the victim's phone's private contents to a dashboard that is viewable by the person that implanted it. In other words, you want to spy on your kids or your spouse or your employees or whatever, this is essentially the app that you would put on there, and it hides itself on an Android. So the stolen data includes the victim's photos, messages, and real-time location data. The app can also be used to remotely access live ambient audio from the phone's microphone, access both front and rear cameras, and on and on and on. But here's the thing, the platform itself had a bug, and that bug basically leaked the database of email addresses and plain text passwords that the actual customers, meaning those that were implanting the spyware, it leaked all of that essentially, and here we are, not to mention giving access to all of the victim's data. So you're implanting the spyware, you're watching things, etc., etc. This is sending data back to Cat Watchful, and all the meanwhile, they expose the actual user so anybody can log in and see your stuff. So, according to a copy of the database that was basically from early June, what Cat Watchful had was email addresses and passwords for more than 62,000 customers and phone data from 26,000 victims. So, obviously not a good look, and heads up to you, if you've got Android, go get yourself antivirus scanner and see if you can find Cat Watchful if it's on your phone. And if it is, who's spying on you? Moving on. Let's do our mini segment simply entitled, If You Just Spent Money on Cybersecurity, You Wouldn't Be Getting Sued, You Wouldn't Be Losing Your Reputation, and I sure as heck wouldn't be talking about you right now. And with that, we are going to prove that if I talk about a data breach, I'm inevitably going to talk about it in this mini segment, because we are starting with Aflac, and I talked about them a couple of weeks ago. A new class action alleges that Aflac failed to safeguard the personally identifiable information and protected health information that it basically retains on its customers. So, plaintiff Jessica Batiste filed a class action complaint against Aflac on June 21st in Georgia federal court, alleging violations of both state and federal consumer laws. So, best of luck to you, Jessica. Looks like many Aflac customers may be paid. Moving on, let's head on over to South Korea and talk about the largest telecom provider there, known as SK Telecom, because this past Friday, South Korean authorities ordered SK Telecom to strengthen data security and imposed a fine after the country's biggest mobile carrier was hit by a cyber attack that caused a leak of the 26.96 million pieces of user data. Now, this measure comes after SK Telecom in April disclosed that it suffered a major leak of customer data caused by a malware attack. Shares of SK Telecom closed down 5.6% this past Friday. Moving on, Cisco, not the 2000s rapper, but the large food delivery service, has just agreed to pay $2.3 million. And the last day, I don't have much more on that, but the last day to submit a valid claim on it is the 8th of September of this year. So if you work for Cisco or impacted by this, go get your money. Probably like $20. Moving on, DG3 North America. Consumers whose private information was potentially compromised by DG3 North America's data breach discovered around March of last year may qualify for up to $2,500. Obviously, if you can really express to them and show evidence that you were really harmed by this, and possibly other benefits. So, Diversified Global Graphics Group North America, along with John Hancock Investment and UBS Financial, agreed to pay $600,000 to settle their class action lawsuit. And obviously it alleges that they failed to adequately protect data, because that's what they all claim. And here we are. And quite frankly, they did if they got breached. So with that, moving on. Clark County, Washington. Now, 2 Clark County residents filed class action lawsuits against the county last week, citing improper protection of residents' information thanks to a data breach dating back to October of 2023. This lawsuit was filed by a Seattle-based law firm on behalf of James Reese on June 16th. On top of this, a California-based firm filed a similar suit on June 17th on behalf of Jessica Hardwick. Now, both suits allege, obviously, breach of implied contract, negligence, unjust enrichment, and the lawsuits call for a judge to order Clark County to pay for 10 years of credit monitoring for those impacted, according to local sources. So, here we are. If you're a resident of Clark County, Washington, you may be caught up in this and you may be getting a lot more free credit monitoring than, well, we're always getting free credit monitoring these days, but here we are. So with that, that's the mini segment. If those companies and the county had just paid for cybersecurity, they wouldn't be getting sued. They wouldn't be losing their reputation. And we wouldn't be talking about them right now. And with that, let's move back into breaches and talk about the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services in the United States. That ain't good. That's the federal government. Now, the personal information of more than 100,000 Medicare recipients may have been compromised in a data incident. And here we go. Now, in this past Monday announcement, CMS said that approximately 103,000 people may have been impacted by an unauthorized use of their data. We're talking about mailing addresses, last names, dates of birth, zip codes, plan premium details, and information about services received, such as date of treatment, treatments, diagnosis codes, and the identity of medical providers. Now, CMS became aware of suspicious activity linked to Medicare.gov. That's right, the actual thing. Basically, the accounts of Medicare.gov on May 2nd of this year, according to the notice, when the Medicare call center began receiving calls from beneficiaries about letters confirming the creation of accounts they did not make. In other words, somebody was trying to rip off identities and basically do a Medicare fraud scheme, and here we go. So if you're caught up in that, or if you're a Medicare recipient and you got a letter stating you spun up something and you don't know what's going on, give Medicare a call, because obviously they know fraud is happening as well. And with that, let's move down into the basically heart of Texas, deep in the heart. Now, we're going to talk about Texas's Department of Transportation, because they announced on June 6th that a security breach involving crash records, specifically the CRIS system, Crash Records Information System, may have exposed the personal information of individuals involved in traffic accidents. Now, according to TX. That's what they go by, the breach was discovered on May 12th of this year. Unusual activity discovered, and an internal investigation basically revealed an account had been compromised and used to improperly access and download this information. So if you were in an accident in Texas, they may have your name, address, driver's license number, license plate number, vehicle details, insurance policy numbers, injury information, and narrative crash descriptions. In other words, what you told the cops happened. So good luck to you, residents of Texas, if you've been in an accident recently. Moving on, benefits and payroll solutions firm Kelly and Associates Insurance Group, DBA Kelly Benefits, and this, my friends, is a big one. So the company, possibly for the record, this might be one of the breaches of the year, if I'm really thinking about this, because, oh Lord, I'm about to tell you. So the company revealed in April that attackers had gained access to its systems in December of last year, and an investigation showed a threat actor managed to steal a whole bunch of personal information and files. And so we're talking about names, dates of birth, social security numbers, tax ID numbers, medical info, health insurance info, and financial account information as well. And Kelly Benefits is notifying basically impacted individuals on behalf of more than 40 of their impacted customers. Their customers include, my God, Aetna Life Insurance, Emergis, Beam Benefits, Beltway Companies, Care First, Guardian Life, Fidelity Building Services Group, Intercon Truck of Baltimore, Humana Insurance, Merit Group, Publishers, Curriculum Fulfillment, Quantum Real Estate Management, United Healthcare. That's awesome. They just got over their massive breach last year, and Transforming Lives. There's going to be more, but we're going to get a whole lot of notifications. You know, I'll keep you up to date here. Absolutely nuts. And with that, let's talk about Louis Vuitton once again. This time, though, we're going to Korea. Last time was a different country, not the U.S. Now, a systems breach of Louis Vuitton Korea in June led to a leak of some customer information, including contact info, but did not involve financial information. Again, that is according to Louis Vuitton. The company said it became aware of the breach this past Wednesday and had notified the government authorities. What this tells us is that Louis Vuitton and its parent company are still going through an investigation. Given how big Louis Vuitton, and for the record, they have a ton of different brands. Louis Vuitton is one of those. I think Victoria's Secret might be one of those, some of the others. They're still unraveling this, which means they just told the Korean branch of Louis Vuitton that they got hit, and now they have an issue as well. This is how subsidiaries work. So I think we're going to see more Louis Vuitton type brands from their parent company, which I can't remember the name of, and here we go. But, you know, once again, I'll keep you up to date. Now, with that, let's head on over to Missouri and talk about basically their healthcare provider, SA Health, or ESSE Health. Now, the incident was discovered on April 21st, and essentially somebody got access to the electronic medical record system in SA Health. And on May 13th, they had basically restored certain systems, and here we go. Phone systems were restored in early June, so this was a bad one. And on June 20th, basically, they said their investigation into the attack determined the threat actor breached their network in April 21 and stole files. So we're talking names, address, dates of birth, social security numbers, medical record numbers, patient account numbers, health insurance information, and health information in general. So if you use SA Health in the state of Missouri, heads up to you. Moving on, let's head on over to Switzerland, land of the private. Their nonprofit health organization, Radix, is confirming that they had their systems breached by a ransomware group earlier in June. Now, in a statement this past Monday, the Zurich-based agency, which runs health promotion programs and online counseling services, said the threat actor known as Sarcoma had published data basically stolen from their systems onto a leak site. The Swiss government also issued a statement notifying that various federal offices are among Radix's customers, and officials are evaluating what data was compromised. Radix has no direct access to government systems, according to the Swiss government. Sarcoma, for the record, is relatively new. They were first detected in October of last year, and in February, they basically were the ones that claimed responsibility for attack on Unimicron. Basically, that's out of Taiwan. They do printed circuit boards, all that kind of stuff. I talked about that a while back, probably in February or March. So, with that, heads up and best of luck to Radix. Moving on, this is another big one. We have to talk about building automation giant Johnson Controls. This is huge because they are a multi-billion-dollar international company, and they are notifying individuals whose data was stolen in a massive ransomware attack that happened in September of 2023. That's right, we're about over a year and a half, almost 2 years into this one. Now, Johnson Controls says they were hit by a ransomware attack in September of 2023 following a breach of their Asian offices in February of that year. So this goes back more than 2 years, although basically what happened was subsequential lateral movement through their network, basically from the Asian office to the North American office, and here we are back in 2024. Now, they confirmed in a January 2024 SEC filing, I'm assuming that, yes, 2024, my God, because we're talking 2023. So it was, this is all, I hate when this happens. Like, you should be notifying sooner. Johnson Controls confirmed in a January 2024 SEC filing that the cyber attack was orchestrated by a ransomware gang that also stole documents from compromised systems during the breach. It's very possible I talked about that a while ago, but because I go looking through 8K filings from the SEC for this exact purpose, Sunday breaches of the week, but here we go. We'll see what happens. Moving on. Let's talk about Verizon, the United States' largest mobile carrier, not to mention internet service provider and a whole bunch of other stuff, although I think Comcast is bigger on the internet service provider side. So Verizon. An alleged Verizon data breach has seen attackers offering for sale a database of 61 million customer records, which includes personal information, useful obviously for both things like phishing attempts, identity theft, etc. But here's the kicker, and here's why this is not one of my finalies of the week. Verizon has issued a statement, and I quote, "We are aware of an issue in which a threat actor posted a data set claiming to be that of Verizon customers on the dark web. We have examined the postings and have determined that it is old data previously posted on the dark web and is not affiliated with our company or customers. Additionally, this threat actor recently made similar cases about other U.S. wireless companies. At this point, there's no need to notify customers and there's no impact to Verizon or its customers," end quote. So, I say all of that to say that if you're a Verizon customer, and there are millions of you, and a whole bunch of you are probably listening or watching this, nothing to worry about right now, according to Verizon. We'll see what happens. And for the record, if you're looking at other major carriers, T-Mobile sneezes and they get a data breach, and Verizon is not that. So we'll see. That said, Verizon has leaked data in the past, so you never know. Moving on, integrated specialty coverages. I wanted to say circuit because of the last thing. But anyway, ISC. They're an insurance program administrator, and their investigation revealed that they were accessed between February 16th through the 19th of this year. Thank you for keeping it in this year. The data breach compromised files containing both PII and PHI, and here we are. Their information basically provided to ISC was through the customer's employer, and so here we go. We're talking names, dates of birth, social security numbers, tax ID, driver's license or government ID numbers, biometric data, and medical information. This breach was disclosed in both the state of California and Texas to their attorney generals, respectively, on July 2nd of this year. Moving on, McLaren Healthcare, I assume nothing to do with the really cool car, they recently disclosed that they've suffered a data breach that compromises sensitive and personal information, including protected health data of individuals. This breach has led to concerns over the security of sensitive and personal information entrusted to their care. And on August 5th of last year, they became aware of basically unauthorized access to their systems. We're just now finding about this. Come on, you got to be transparent. This is how you rebuild trust. You've got to disclose. You've got to tell people what's going on. Otherwise, names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, medical information, and health insurance information is hanging out there to be used in an identity theft scam that eventually will be traced back to you, and that's when the lawsuits get even worse. So please, please, please disclose your data breaches. Moving on. Mainline Health Systems. They recently disclosed they suffered a data breach of protected health information of individuals on April 10th of last year. Again, 2024, they experienced an incident. And you name it. I mean, if somebody looked at Mainline Health System, they got data breached. And this one, full name, social security numbers, dates of birth, driver's license numbers, financial account information, financial account access information, payment card numbers, payment card access information, medical record numbers, patient IDs, Medicaid numbers, health insurance policy numbers, health insurance group numbers, medical diagnosis information, medical treatment procedure information, clinical information, prescription information, provider names, the name of your third grade teacher, the first person you were into, and the last person you hated. I don't know. That's absolutely insane. So heads up, Mainline Health System. That's absolutely nuts. Moving on, let's go down under to Qantas. I actually really like this airline. I've flown them several times throughout the decades. Big fan. But anyway, they are now contacting customers after a cyber attack targeted their third-party customer service platform. On June 30th, the Australian airline detected unusual activity on a platform used by its contact center to store data on 6 million people. So we're talking names, email addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, and frequent flyer numbers. The company is still investigating the full extent of the breach, but says it's expected basically that a portion of the data that is stolen is going to be quote-unquote significant. It has assured the public that passport details, credit card details, and personal financial information were not in this system, and no frequent flyer accounts, passwords, or PINs have been compromised. So heads up, Aussies. And the few of us that are not Aussies that are flying Qantas on the regular, heads up. Ooh, not good at all. And finally, And we've got to talk about finally, but I've got to give the preamble before I dive in, which is cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're not immune from it. And we have to talk about Columbia University, because in the last couple of days, we have had some major news stories break on Columbia. They've been in the news for political reasons, but now we're going cyber. And this is coming from ABC News, as well as many other sources I verified this with. But here's what's going on. A politically motivated attacker breached Columbia University's data systems basically in the past week, stealing a ton of student documents while briefly shutting down the school's computer systems. That's according to a university official talking this past Wednesday. Now, the June 24 cyber attack prompted widespread network outages on campuses, their campus, locking students and staff out of their email accounts, coursework, and video conference software for several hours. On the same day, images of President Trump's smiling face appeared on several public monitors across the Manhattan campus. Now, a spokesperson for Columbia declined to elaborate on the political motivations behind the attack, but officials described a highly sophisticated quote-unquote hacktivist who had gained access to private student records in an attempt to further a political agenda. The spokesperson said it was unclear if the Trump photo display was connected to the data breach. Quote, "We are investigating the scope of the apparent theft and will share our findings with the university community as well as anyone whose personal information was compromised." End quote. That's according to the official statement from Columbia University. The attack comes as Columbia remains, as I mentioned before, essentially in the crosshairs of the Trump administration, which has threatened to pull basically $400 million in federal funds over what it claims is the school's failure to protect its Jewish student population. So with that, I'll leave it to you. You tell me if it's politically motivated or not. This is what Columbia's official statements are. But I think it's important to understand that with everything that's going on around the world, obviously we have, Israel, Gaza, all that mess. We've got Israel, Iran, U.S., Israel, Iran, not to mention Russia, Ukraine, and everything else going on. We are basically in the era of politically motivated hacking, whether it's a nation state, somebody on behalf of a nation state, somebody that's just a big fan of a nation state. Here we go. And so I think we're going to see more of these, and I'm just making you aware that once again, cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're definitely not immune from it. And I think this week, Columbia University proves that. So, were you impacted? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, please, please attempt to stay private, informed, and secure. Take care.